Hey, how's it going, everybody? JT here on behalf of the Ethfinance Community on Reddit, at ProDJKC on Twitter, hanging out once again in the EVMavericks Discord, and we hope that you guys are having a great Friday so far. This is episode number 35. I'm going to call this one the Permissionless Bankless DAO Barbecue Hangover. I mean, look at me, for real. It was such a great time. I feel like a middle-aged woman who just won the wet t-shirt contest at the biker rally, but I am ready to rock and roll. The Weekly Doots live stream is all about showcasing the best of the best from the last week of the Ethfinance Community on Reddit. This is a read-along reaction series, and if you want to follow along, head on over to dailydoots.com, designed and produced by our very own Hanniabu. And while you're at it, grab today's POAP, and a big thanks once again to Tricky Troll. We thank him each and every week for curating all of these Doots every single day across the Ethfinance subreddit, and for the A-word, to the A-word, for getting our weekly Doots list that we're going to go over today. As always, if you know somebody that wants to get a piece of this action as a guest, we'd love to have them on. Send them my way. And I actually met a few people down in Austin. I think we're going to line them up for some future episodes. So with that, let's move on over to dailydoots.com. We're going to get right into our rich list. Right at number 10, Hanniabu is at 55, Benito 2030 at 57, Scientist at 58, K-Brot static at 60. Ever since Reddit, I think what K-Brot did is ever since Reddit did away with their API access or whatever, API access for third-party apps, he's been kind of quiet. But this, I'd love to see this number start moving again. Set one less at 62, 696 underscore ETH at 64, Tricky Troll at 67, Cryptowow Currency at 74, Logary the Bard broke 80 Doots at number 2, and of course the almighty everlasting Super Fizz atop the heap at 118. So let's get right into our weekly Doots for, let's see, maybe I got to refresh a page. There it is. September 15th, getting right into the morning Trinity. It looks like Hey Chibi made Ethereum, made that first comment of the daily. Ethereum Alexis KF at $1,629, 696 chiming in on the ratio at 0.61. And there you have your morning Trinity, our weekly haiku, courtesy of JS Tears. There is nothing to hide. Privacy can't be applied as you've never lied. How does he do it? Thank you, JS Tears, for the haiku of the week. Now we have our Q, courtesy of Space Cider, your daily beacon chain dose. Active validators at 796,700, up 2,353. Pending validators, we have joining 36,000 and leaving roughly 0. The entry queue is down 200 from yesterday's number. It will take around 13 and a half days for the entry queue to clear. These figures are based on the entry and exit queue at the time of posting and can also be tracked at validatorq.com. And finally, our shit post of the week, courtesy of Cryptowow Currency, our shit post of the week, because we always like to save the best for first. Vitalik's Twitter account was hacked. It's all over. Everyone, please start panicking. This is lesser known, but Ethereum's consensus mechanism depends on a Twitter integration with Vitalik's account. So it's likely the Ethereum chain will halt within a few hours. I don't know if the client teams will be able to implement a workaround for the Twitter dependency in time. Ethereum's Twitter integration was supposed to be removed as a vestigial feature in the merge fork, but I guess the devs didn't get around to it. I really hope Charles Hoskinson still has access to the manual override key and is willing to use it to recover the chain. The only other person I know of with the Ethereum admin key is Sam Bankman-Fried, and he won't be able to save us this time for obvious reasons. If we can't get together any of those admin keys, we'll have to ask Elon Musk to go into Vitalik's account to turn Ethereum off and back on again for us. Please send thoughts and prayers. Holy cow, that's a banger, Crypto Currency. Excellent job, dude. Oh my gosh. And you know that, like, there was a point in time across crypto news organizations where they would just like misquote stuff. You could actually see that being like a scheme for hackers to use. It's a shit post to us, but for like, Mom and Pop, Bob and Alice, they may not understand that it's all comedy. So anyway, yeah. Welcome in, everybody. Looks like we got a nice crowd today. Ooh, we got James Carnley.eth showed up here. 0x Black Boy. He's a new member. We met down in Austin. I'm glad you could make it. Of course, Austin ST. Be Broad. Hashtag. Logri the Bard is here. The A-word Treebeard. Man, it's so good to see everybody. So, yeah, this last week, the A-word actually came to Kansas City, and we rode down to Austin together and threw down some barbecue for Bankless Dow members. It was a really good time. It was kind of funny because when I first got there and started working, and the A-word's with me, he can attest to this, but it was just neat because they had heard that there was this guy from Kansas City coming to do barbecue, and they were super excited that like somebody would drive down to Austin to do barbecue, but they thought some of them thought I was like a hired gun, like a chef that they knew. And it was like, no, man, like we've been friends in the space for a long time. And they took a look at, balding, fat, middle-aged me, grandpa style. And they're like, that guy's been in since like so long ago. Like I'm just not quite in the same mold as a lot of people in crypto. So it was really something special. And then by the end of it, there was a lot of big hugs and happy people with full bellies. I actually got a couple of pictures here. I also put it out on Twitter, but like this was the,
ready?
I don't know if you can hear this, but there's the pulled pork. And we had, pork butt. Yeah, this is a pork butt. I did a total of nine pork butts. They went on at so there's a lot. There was 9 pork butts, 6 gallons of beans. The pork butts went on for about 14 hours or so. And coleslaw made a homemade dressing with lemon juice and everything, bagel seasoning, and just kind of threw together some stuff that I knew would fly and work. And I really couldn't have done it as smoothly without having the A-word there. So my hat's off to him. This is actually the second time we've been able to work together, putting together food for people at a crypto conference. He helped me out at Kevin Owaki's church in Denver. Yeah, there's the beans right there. And so he was absolutely just instrumental every step of the way. Anything I needed, he would help go make a run, and just, pretty lucky to have somebody to help out because it's a lot. Let me see if I can find. I got another picture. Yeah, there's the picture of the group. There was probably about 100. I would say about 100 people floated through. I met a lot of people that were Chippies, CHIPPI. Apparently there's an NFT artist named Perchy, and I don't know if I have any Chippies that are listening in right now, but shout out to you guys. I really felt like the Chippy community would resonate really well with the EVMavericks community. The ethos of how their NFTs were minted was, it was based on the artwork, and you would commission this artist. I guess his name is Perchy. I hope I don't butcher this, but anyway, the people pitched in to get their own NFTs made, and they're all one-offs. And I think there was a total of like 500, if I remember. Whereas like the EVMavericks, we're still like, I still have never heard of another NFT community that was retroactively whitelisted the way that we were. So this was a really special time for all involved, and I think that a lot of the folks that had the barbecue were like, they were really, really surprised. I think personally, my favorites is, there's 2 things that are like favorites. When I get like Texas people or Memphis people or Carolina people that are kind of known regionally as barbecue, when I get a compliment from them, it means something. But my favorite, I'm telling you, my favorite is like when I have some big city folks that just can't barbecue for whatever reason because they can't like have a fire in town, or even better when it's like somebody that's just like from a state that doesn't do it, or people that are from other countries and they just want to know how it works. And that's when I really get into my element, because I could be a teacher again. And it was just really special. So anyway, I had a blast. So shout out to Bankless Dow. Thank you to Ryan, Sean Adams, and David Hoffman for giving me an opportunity to go down there. And I think it was a mutual benefit for them, because they had something for people to look forward to that was definitely a little bit out of the ordinary. I don't know if anybody wants to chime in real quick before we move on down the list. All right. If you want to chime in, feel free to unmute. We're going to go down the list for this week's Daily Doots, the Weekly Doots here. We're going to start off with Sikh Soldiers points out that Lido is going against one of its core principles set forth by Paradigm. It boils my blood that Lido Finance thinks fit to go against one of the founding Lido principles set forward by Paradigm. Governance is and always has been the existential risk that Lido presents. Dual governance is a band-aid solution, not any kind of permanent one, and is very fallible. As long as LDO governance can control the validator registry, LDO should not exceed roughly 33% of the network. There is no hard line here because the threat isn't based on any hard line. The threat is that LDO slowly gains a subversive power over Ethereum due to its ability to threaten node operators with the boot. A very powerful threat that at Gaconst, I'm not sure how to say the name, rightfully points out all those years ago. The staking router and the coming forced exits upgrades will further exacerbate the issue. Both will increase the power of LDO token holders over the node operators. Forced exits especially worry me, as it has been touted as their solution for keeping their permission node operators in line. Governance is a weakness. The existence of a threat is the problem itself. We cannot rely on LDO holders to be good stewards, not even with Steth veto power. The apathy and bureaucracy of DAO governance is too powerful a deterrent for vetoes to reliably work. The only solution is to remove the threat completely. Georgios goes on to write, quote, if said pool is sufficiently governance minimized, it could possibly win the entire market without causing any systemic risk for Ethereum. Where's the minimization, friends? In April 2022, I published a now deleted thread called, quote, a case against ETH, where I explained why neither DVT nor social scores for permissionless node operators would work to scale their node operators to set fast enough for the rate that they were growing their stake. The entire thread stands true today. The recent Neithermind ETH report suggests using a Claros court to judge Sybil cases. That's a joke when nation states are out there human trafficking and dedicating billions to hacking exploits and evading Sybil detection. If Lido messes up their Sybil implementation, we could find ourselves with 10 to 15% of all ETH staked sitting in North Korea and a Sybil farm of node operators with zero capital bond. Lido should self-limit, not because of any consensus attacks. They should self-limit because STETH is growing faster than they can decentralize and research ways to safely introduce permissionless nodes without jeopardizing the network. Don't let their campaign fool you. Lido Finance has not shed any of its governance functionality. In fact, it plans on growing it. This is the danger of STETH dominance, and there's 2 links there, all available at dailydoots.com. If anybody wants to chime in, now's your chance. All right, moving on. Benito, go ahead.
I love Jasper, man.
Yeah.
It's such a well put together post, right? Like, gets back to their roots, calls them out in their bullshits, really gets right to the root of the problem, like the core of the problem.
Just got to pound the drum.
The post I'm going to have you talking about in a little bit is on multi-cameral governance structures, and what they're proposing for an STE veto is kind of like a very weak version of what I'm talking about there, right? Where you have different parties that have a check and balance on each other. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad idea, but the fact that it wouldn't matter if they gave veto governance to the core dev call members. Like, it wouldn't address the fact that there is a potential governance system that will be compromised over time, right? Yeah, I think he just nails it out of the park with that one. I love that post.
You just got to keep saying it over and over. I don't know. Something's got to break. Something's got to break. You know what? Why don't we do this? Let's just go straight to yours, since you're saying it kind of slips in with this a little bit, and then we'll come back and get Benito.
Vaguely. I'm not trying to derail your show.
Oh, there's no derailing. It's our show. All right. Let's just go to you next. Logri the Bard has another great discussion on DAO governance. I wrote recently about multi-cameral governance designs. The responses that have come up in response to this post have taken two forms. Number one, voter participation sucks, and we need to concentrate power to make anything work around here. I'll address that a bit in a different post. Number two, isn't this going to devalue the governance token? What is the point of a governance token that only has a minority power over governance? I'd like to take a few paragraphs to discuss what I think the rights and responsibilities of permissionlessly tradable governance tokens should be in a multi-cameral governance structure. Among the most modern DAO designs, there is usually a singular governance token. This token usually serves two purposes. The first, as the name implies, is that it acts as a force in governance. The second is it serves as a fundraising tool, potentially by multiple mechanisms such as ICO, bond, inflation schedules, or call options. There are a few other minor uses as well that I go into here, and there's a hyperlink. When people buy this token, they do so with the expectation that they have a claim upon the future profit of the system of the DAO governs. Ultimately, greed-fueled speculation is what gives governance tokens most of their tradable value. The abysmal governance participation we see from most DAOs today is a strong indication that the governance power of governance tokens is not the primary source of their demand. Therefore, adopting a multi-cameral governance structure and diluting this governance power should not overly affect the usefulness of a governance token as a fundraising mechanism. That said, care must be taken to protect the contractual rights of the governance token for its primary purpose. If clarity on this is not provided, investor confidence will wane, and the DAO will quickly find itself unable to raise funds by issuing tokens. At that point, the DAO either must have a self-sufficient product, rely on charity from necessary participants, or watches necessary participants stop doing their necessary work and the system fails. One guarantee the DAO can provide to the governance token holders is to escrow the treasury funds directly within the governance token governing body, the capital module. System profit should be automatically sent to the treasury. At minimum, since each governing body controls its own state, this gives the token holders the ability to revoke token approval to these funds to the parent DAO. This guarantees those token holders a contractual right to the treasury should the DAO dissolve or they want to revolt. All they have to do is pass a policy to pay out the treasury themselves. Another guarantee the DAO can provide the governance token holders is to make it very difficult for the parent DAO to change any fund flow related to policies without their approval. The capital module needs to have confidence that their power over the purse can't be whimsically revoked. Different types of proposals in the parent DAO can potentially have different rules required to ratify them. This is also consistent with granting governance power over topics to those it affects the most. The governance token holders are the most affected by changes to monetary flows and should have greater say on changing certain parameters related to that than their other governing bodies. This satisfies a design goal of fairness. The last guarantees all come, let me back up. The last guarantees all come from the ability of each governing body to maintain its own internal state. Sorry, that sentence fucked me up. The parent DAO can only invoke functions on the governing body contract that it allows. Any control over these matters the capital module grants to the parent DAO are inherently revocable. This gives the capital module ultimate control over the issuance of the governance token and all matters dependent on that, such as how to incentivize liquidity depth for the token, how to structure bonds, its inflation schedule, etc. In summary, it is my belief that so long as the governance token holders have faith in the future revenue of the system and their claim right to it, the token should retain value. So long as it has value, it can serve its primary purpose as a fundraising mechanism. I don't believe in diluting the governance power of these tokens will destroy their value, but I do think it can lead to a DAO that is more resilient and likely to succeed in the long term for reasons stated in my previous post. The main ingredient we're missing to try this somewhere is a guinea pig and a fairly small software package. I think it's a much better direction than what Rune is doing to Maker with, quote, neural tokenomics, unquote, for example. And that comes to us by way of Logri the Bard, another big banger. Awesome.
How much of that did you understand, JT?
I'd have to read it again when I'm not like war torn and barbecue sauce loaded, and I'm not even really hungover. That wouldn't be fair. I'm just physically and a little bit mentally tired. I would need I think it would make sense to have a kind of like a flow chart, like a bubble chart thing, or whatever, like connecting some lines, if this, then that kind of stuff. You got a lot going on there, but it seems like you're saying it's kind of in a very simple way and in comparatively a few words, like some options here that people can do to fix this voter participation problem and retain.
It's actually not the voter participation problem.
Mm-hmm.
I'm drawing an insight that different types of issues should be voted on by different people based on their expertise.
Oh, I see.
So, and the other thing is that right now when we do airdrops, there's a single airdrop, which is the only time that the DAO, whatever it's about to be, has a chance to decide on its voters according to something other than who can buy and sell the token. From the moment of the airdrop after, a billionaire could come in and own the DAO.
Gotcha.
Right? Like the only time that we have to decide who's going to run the DAO is at airdrop time.
So it's almost like different colors of governance tokens within one big airdrop.
Yeah, except for I'm suggesting that it's probably not healthy for most of those tokens to be tradable, or else they just will all be taken over by capital in the long term.
Gotcha.
Right? As long as they have a monetary flow attached to them, someone's going to say, "Oh, I'll buy because it gets a 5% yield," and that will eventually dominate who is holding the token.
It's like buying
people that are
influence.
buying these things as investments usually are not that active in governance matters. That's why governance participation is so abysmal in these tokens. And the issues that they care about tend to be very related to the monetary flows. One, they bought into a system for its monetary flows, and so it seems ethical that they have a higher weight in those decisions somehow. And then second, for other things related to like day-to-day operations, do you really need someone that's investing for a 5% yield be voting on, I don't know, the configuration parameters for an Alchemix vault? Like,
right.
What do they know, right?
Yeah, because
that's not their expertise.
Yeah, you want to delegate that to somebody who knows a bit more about it. It's like,
do they even know who to delegate to? The point is they have no expertise, and so I don't think the answer is just, well, let a multi-sig run everything and have it completely untethered to governance votes. But I do think that we could have when I say multi-cameral, it just means that there are different governing bodies. They're like houses, right? You have the House of Lords, the House of Commons, or the U.S. Congress, the House versus the Senate. These are multi-cameral systems, and you can have selection criteria for each house be different. So you can have one selection criteria be expertise on, the Alchemix system, because those are the people that are borrowing from the vaults, for example. And so they have at least minimal experience interacting with the vault system and know what that's about, and they can see the relative attraction of each one and dial in parameters. they would probably be at least minorly better suited than just someone that threw a dollar into the LCX token, right?
Right.
So I'm trying to draw on this insight that if I'm the U.S. Congress, it's damn silly for the person who has the background in, I don't know, being a doctor to be making decisions on road infrastructure, right? But that's how we do it right now.
Yeah, we don't have like a house
because
of...
we organize the Senate based on who to represent territoriality, right? Like someone from this zip code has a representative, and it kind of bubbles up. So we don't bubble up our governance structure in like the U.S. government by expertise. We do it by locality. And I think that when you're in a digital nation state, locality has no real meaning. All you have to go by organization is aptitude at various tasks. And so you can make a more technocratic or more merit-based governance system by continually selecting people with aptitude at certain tasks and giving them higher influence over those tasks, right?
So this would be kind of almost like you got a doctor, right, not chiming in on road construction. So you have like the American Medical Association versus like the Department of Transportation, right? So you're kind of,
so the
it's
guy
almost
that
like a
owns the
democracy thing.
the guy that owns the concrete, company, he's running in the Senate. Like, cool,
The
he
mafia?
can have a large, yeah, exactly. He can have a larger say over the how much of the funds go to bridges or whatever. And the guy that's the doctor, maybe he has a higher say over abortion, right? And the it's not to say the other person has zero say. We're just talking about relative weights. And as long as we can have a system of adjudicating what type of issue is being voted on, right, and resolve that, then we can say, now that we've resolved that type, here is who has how much influence over that. And if we get out tradable tokens, then you don't really have to care if I debase you. So we could have a rebasing influence token that's not tradable under most circumstances. And I just like have your influence, and then I redistribute another block of influence to whoever has demonstrated aptitude to this topic in the last X time period. We just do this forever. Because you can't buy or sell it, what's your what's your claim of harm, right?
Okay, so let's look at, could it be, this is just me spitballing here, let's say in the Mavericks DAO, just because you're talking about having a guinea pig, let's say for whatever, I'm just going to pick an arbitrary number, that we have 10 people that want to be focused on content creation. We have 10 people that are probably going to be good at like grant applications. I don't know, whatever. We have 10 people that are good at taking the EVMavericks and building new NFT features, such as, changing the smiles and the eyeballs and the hair, whatever, whatever. So for each of those 10 things, you just issue a one-off NFT for each of those 10 things. And then once a person gives up or they die or whatever, that NFT gets burned. It can't be sold to somebody else. So then,
if you
then
do it
you'd
with
have
NFT,
like
you're
a
doing it in
DAO.
a very discreet way.
Yeah, you'd have a DAO structure that could produce another NFT to fill that slot.
You could do this with a bunch of different councils.
It's almost like a Supreme Court for each of these.
But then there's
things.
this kind of like, okay, if there is a larger vote, how does each of the council, like you could chop up the matters and say all the road projects go down to the road council, or you could say the road council if it reaches 50%, it can be ratified by the other houses, or if they veto that for some reason, then you could use 66% vote, right? That would be a very familiar type of structure, right? So you don't have to completely delegate the matter.
Sure.
You can have it just different weighted influence based on who's the primary owner of a given issue or vote.
Okay, let's say we got construction technology and we have doctors, and there's a hospital that needs to be made. Now you have to have both of those intertwined to produce a vote there, right? So it's not just strictly a medical thing.
So if
so
there's
you'd have a lot of
contention,
overlap. Yeah.
If there's contention, you could imagine something like a judicial branch, or you could use something like a UMA oracle that's a neutral third party to decide using a like commit reveal scheme. There's fair ways of basically adjudicating who has ownership over a given vote if it becomes contentious. Or you could just say, look, we can have another vote on where this vote goes. Right?
The consultants. So the consultants are the wild card swing voters.
Well, they're paid to ascertain truth
Yeah.
in a way that is so with commit reveal schemes, you all have to vote based on what you think the truth is, and then you reveal your vote after a certain after everyone's had a chance to vote. And based on the spread of answers, you are paid out based on your accuracy. It's like game theory. What is everyone else going to think about the measure of the ETH price today? Well, the easiest answer is the actual ETH price today. If you want to try and make a conspiracy that the ETH price is $100 higher or something, in theory you could, but you'd have to coordinate with all the other people in the system to like vote that's $100 higher, right? So a lot of these systems come down to what would a reasonable person assess the answer to this question to be? Because that's going to be the most popular answer. That's the shelling point, and the commit reveal scheme is going to largely produce that as a result.
Got it.
And if you have no vested interest in the outcome other than assessing the truth of some question, it's like putting something forth to a jury, right? You don't usually put the whole case to a jury. You say, here are the open questions the jury has to reach a determination on. Is the person guilty? To what extent? Here's a fact that was disputed by the initial trial. You put that forth, and you're basically saying, what would a reasonable person reach as a decision here? The jury has no vested interest in the case. You know, it uses similar principles, but it's decentralized so that anyone can come in and participate at scale, right? And so we can have people from all over the world reaching this determination. And anyway, it's a one-time oracle, so it doesn't cost that much to do it. It can cost you a few $100s to have a few hundred people reach a determination on some question. And otherwise you could just say, look, the DAO in total votes on where the issue is assigned, right? And that'd be another simple, probably cheaper answer, but with different consequences. So I'm just trying to say, coming from this basic intuition that I want different people to have varying degrees of influence in the outcome of a question, then how can I accomplish that, right? And I think multicameralism is a good way of representing that, because it allows you to select those different people and file them into different governing bodies, right? And then constantly be rejuvenating the ownership of that governing body based on who has demonstrated aptitude at that task. So it's not just a one-shot airdrop and then it's up to the wins. You can constantly be reallocating that pie chart of influence based on who's now the participants in the system, right? So if you look at your daily Doots, who's been rising in the system recently? You could look at like a relative Doots delta over each month, and then the people that have been contributing the most recently, they're going to have half the influence, and everyone else that had half the influence last month, they're going to now have a quarter of the influence, and then it's going to be 12% of people in month 3, and 6% of people in month 4, and 3% of people in month 5. Down you go until you just like lot it at 1%. And so we could have a like time-weighted Doot leaderboard set of who's participating lately, and they're the people that are active on Doot-related matters. I don't know what that would be, but you get the point, right?
It would also be neat to, this is kind of a side thing, but visually, and I know Hanniabu is going to roll his eyes when I say this, because it's one of these deals where it's always a good idea, but it's really hard in practice to code. But it'd be neat if he could make a heat map for like who's rising. So like, for instance, we, who was it last week, had three Doots in a day. And then
like
if
Crypt Wow is like way out dooting me in recent months. Right?
He's like red hot with flames and like triple kill 100s after his name.
So imagine we just take a chop of the top 10 every month, emojis. And then we give them the top 10 for the last month own half of the voting influence. And then if you were in the previous month, you had your stake gets halved in order to make room for that new half, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we just keep doing that system. That would be a way of continually rejuvenating who has influence in the Doots governing body, right? The point is, it's not just a single airdrop. It can constantly be re-airdropped based on this selection criteria that you evaluate, right?
Yeah, the rolling
airdrop. And then those people would be the people that are, in theory, informed about this ecosystem and writing about it prolifically and discussing it, and the good contributors. Like, there's different matters you would want to delegate higher influence to them over just a largely ignorant democratic sweep of everyone gets one vote.
Mm-hmm.
And that can lead to a more technocratic or a more merit-based outcome from a governance system.
A merit-based
I'm right.
A merit-based airdrop. I like
Yeah.
it. Almost
I mean,
like the Mavericks.
I think all airdrops are merit based to some extent, but they're one shot.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have to be one shot because they're tradable. If I was to suddenly keep airdropping this thing over and over, it wouldn't hold value because people would be like, well, it's going to get sold to the ground, right?
Like XRP.
Like a lot of things. I mean, we've seen with like Ohm, right?
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep inflating this thing 1,000%. What's going to happen to the price? Well, obviously, eventually. I mean, it was like, Acme Coyote running off the cliff for a while there, but eventually, yeah, gravity won.
So do you have, okay, so to back up to your post, do you have this on your website, tokenomicsexplained.com? Is it part of a larger essay?
Yeah, so I posted to you that Roku doc I was working on. So I'm doing some consulting work for Roku on governance design. And this is a subsection of that.
Nice.
So that's at like 30 pages or something now. And yeah, so this is a subsection of that. I will eventually pull out some posts on my website on like federated structures versus confederated structures, or like multi-cameral and this type of like airdrop selection system I'm talking about. I think they're all valid topics in and of themselves. But if you compare this to, when I look at what Maker's pushing right now with neural tokenomics, I'm just like shaking my head. Like, this is so convoluted, and it's just gonna, no matter, like, every individual sub-DAO of it is just gonna be taken over by money eventually. It doesn't actually help anything, right? It looks like it was made by Yuga Labs.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you for your contribution, Logri, and your explanation, and of course, lending your talents with explaining what's going on inside that big brain of yours, man. Really appreciate it. We're going to move on down the list here to Benito 2030, who shares their favorite recent podcast episodes. Benito said some weeks ago, I started publishing some podcast recommendations featuring interesting episodes. Since I enjoy podcasts, I thought it might be a service to the community to highlight those I really liked or maybe disliked. Let's see what the future brings. It's not a real summary, so if my thoughts make you curious, you might want to jump in and listen to the full episode. They are always linked in the headline. Here's a list of all the past posts, and there's 3 different links here that he did. But for this week, he put this. Now, here are the new ones I really liked from the past couple of weeks. Interestingly, they are all very technical, and let me be honest, I sometimes couldn't really follow the guests or the hosts. I think they are all great, but in these cases, I would really recommend taking some dedicated podcast time with 100% focus. Bankless had a podcast he recommends, Scaling Ethereum to the Next Level with ZK EVM, featuring Justin Drake and Brian Redford. Maybe you remember a post from user Liberosis talking about the different types of ZK EVMs there are. I tried to find it, but I couldn't. This podcast basically talks partially about this. Since this is a fairly technical topic, it's moderated by Justin Drake, and RSA, Ryan Sean Adams, is more or less a downgraded to the listener. This includes how L1 might become a ZK EVM in the future based on some of the developments in the LT landscape and the positive side effects this might have. For instance, lower hardware requirements for validators. I think this episode is pretty good and a great addition to the sci-fi roadmap. I hit a wrong button here. Sci-fi roadmap episode from ETHCC, since it's forward-looking. But in the end, this is why we are here, right? The second podcast that they recommend is from Epicenter. Benito recommends Epicenter, Frontier Research, Solving Ethereum's MEV Problem, featuring Stephanie Gosselin, maybe. This episode is a pretty good one if you're into MEV. Stephanie Gosselin was one of the Flashbots founders and has left the project some months ago. Man, am I saying Stephanie as in a girl, or Stephane or Stephen? I don't want to mess this up. I'm just going to say Gosselin. Flashbot founder. In this episode, he talks a little bit about MEV landscape, his impact. Okay, here we go. And how he would rate it. Interesting answer here. On top, he gives some insights into his new venture, Frontier Research. One major topic is RFQ, request for quotes and intents. But they also tackle PBS, MEV burn, etc. I think you need a pretty decent understanding of MEV to be able to follow this episode. If you do, this is 60 minutes plus of very good content, especially since Stefan knows about flashbots, but is not 100% aligned. But going down a new and much needed experimental road. And finally, the last podcast Benito recommends, Uncommon Core 2.0, an incomplete guide to PBS featuring Mike Neuter and Chris Hager. PBS, or otherwise known as Proposer-Builder Separation, has been around since a year or so. This episode features Mike Neuter from the EF and Chris Hager from Flashbots, which is a pretty good panel since the main parties involved came together. The first hour or so is a discussion. The second part is a follow-up discussion with only Hasu and John. My takeaway, Proposer-Builder Separation is a design philosophy or space. What does this mean? When I first learned about it, I basically thought PBS was designed. The scope was clear, and we only needed implementation. I think the conclusion after this episode is that this is not the case. There are a lot of different implementations possible, and it's not even clear if ePBS, otherwise known as enshrined, public proposer-builder separation. Okay, enshrined proposer-builder separation is the way to go, and it's not even clear if that's the way to go. User ETH10K is FUD. Since we talked about MEV burn yesterday, this is the episode that led to my answer. Okay. And then ETH10K is FUD. Okay, Benito, this sucks. This is also technical. Why didn't you include a podcast I can just listen to on my way to work or in the gym, and if I blink, I can just continue listening? Well, I'm glad you asked, Benito says, because I've got you covered. Here's a bonus episode from the chopping block. Coinbase's Paul Grewal on why the SEC is going after crypto so aggressively. This chopping block episode is a pretty good summary about the SEC versus crypto and Coinbase. I liked it a lot because I think Paul is a pretty cool guest. He's Coinbase's chief legal officer. Oh, yeah, I know this guy. Okay. And he is pretty transparently explains why Coinbase acts in the way it does. I'm not sure the speculation about Gary Gensler's motivation is the best approach, but the rest of it is a very good summary and includes some industry insights that I think are very interesting. And if you don't follow as closely, this episode is the one you want to listen to. This is it for today, but I already have picked out one podcast episode for the 5th edition. So if you want somebody to follow on Reddit who posts their favorite podcast episodes, not just the podcasts themselves, but particular episodes, which I think is super helpful for people, user Benito2030. Shout out to you. Thank you for supplying that to Ethfinance. Anybody want to chime in on that? Otherwise, I'm going to move on down the line. All right. Very good. User Newman513 talks about methods to mitigate issues from the ever-growing validator set. I see some chatter in here today about the late-stage proposal to limit the validator churn limit for inclusion in DNAB. I've been following this relatively closely since I think that this has the potential to brew into a Category 5 storm for the 250 of us that are terminally online and plugged into Ethereum development drama. I first became aware of this, quote, issue during the ACD 113. Bad news always comes on the 13th. TLDR on the issue, parroting Kristen Kim, because she can summarize better than I can, quote, a large validator set size is undesirable because this increases the computational burden on validator nodes and creates complications for implementing future code changes, such as single slot finality. Another quote, without a countermeasure in the next 9 to 10 months to address validator set size growth, at MK Allen2 said that the computational load on nodes could increase 3x with the increased volume of messaging on the network layer. So, what are some possible solutions? Bullet 1, reduce rewards. Incentives will reduce the number of validators joining and motivate some to exit. Bullet 2, cap the number of validators. Number 3, cap the churn limit. And number 4, implement longer-term solutions that actually solve the problem, but require more research and development to design and vet. It looks like option 3 is being pursued in the short term. That is capping the churn limit, if only to buy more time. I think that this is a phenomenal example of just how fragile Ethereum is and why even 7+ years in it's critical to be mindful of introducing systems on top of the protocol that bring with them considerable unknowns. Think eigenlayer. Love the potential innovation, but the stage-gated, slow rollout to understand the intricacies of the interdependencies that new primitives introduce is preferable to me. And I'd argue responsible, particularly when building on top of something so unsteady that it's managed to command as much economic importance as Ethereum has since inception. I will get off my soapbox. Y'all are on the same page. Hopefully the summary and sources will be helpful. And there are 4 different links to look at here for content furthering this conversation. Big shout out to Newman513 for this. I love how he says the 250 of us that are terminally online and plugged into Ethereum development drama. I tell you what, the people up in the ivory tower that are paying attention to this stuff, thank you. And good catch, A-Word, for finding this one and putting it on the weekly. If anybody has any comments, now's a great time to chime in. All right, moving on down. Someday it's dark. User Someday It's Dark starts a discussion after a recent block proposal. I posted this to the EVM Discord, but I figured it would be healthy to blast here too. Well, thank you. I proposed my 4th block recently, party emoji. But because my MEV boost minimum bid is set to 0.05, if I don't receive any bids higher than 0.05, my clients, sorry, my phone's ringing, spam risk, wouldn't you know? 0.05, my clients built, let me back up. Because my MEV boost minimum bid is set to 0.05, if I don't receive any bids higher than 0.05, my client builds the block itself. That is working fine. So far, 3/4 of my blocks have been homemade, but my most recent block had my first Tornado Cash transaction in it. I'm just annoyed by regulatory lack of clarity on whether or not I should care as a U.S. operator. I could run MEV boost with no minimum bid and point it at the only OFAC compliant relays, is what the government might say in the future. What happens eventually once we have a proposer-builder separation? That's the plan, right? I'm not super familiar with how that works. If U.S. validators currently aren't held to KYC regulations, which I believe is accurate, then we shouldn't care at all even if someone wants to transact with an OFAC list address. Maybe that's a bad assumption. If I need to be OFAC compliant, then I need to know for sure. That way I can either just do it or move my server out of the country. Would that even be sufficient? Even Coinbase still validates non-compliant transactions, or so I've heard. I haven't actually confirmed this. I'm going to go look. According to this blurb, and there's a link, they run some validators without MEV deliberately to prevent censorship. Prime and retail Coinbase users are opted into MEVs automatically, by the way. I just started to peep Etherscan to see what the big exchanges are doing, and now they list a recent Kraken block with Tornado Cash transaction. Let me open up these in another tab. Most I'm finding are Lido blocks, but that's hardly surprising. So we can see on Etherscan these transactions, and I probably have to open up another tab here to see the Tornado Cash piece contract internal, and Uniswap, Arbitrum, Uniswap, Seaport. Let me Control F. If I do Tornado, does that work? Okay. Yeah, I don't know how to look at this properly. All right. So that's a interesting conversation about proposing blocks and the MEV and all that stuff. So someday it is dark. Someday it's dark, user. Thank you very much. Moving on down, Hans Gruber and the future of everything's with a Z on the end, checking in from Permissionless 2023. Okay, Hans Gruber. This is about Permissionless down in Austin. I'm here Venue is awesome. Probably a little bigger than necessary, but it's better to have the space than not. Yeah. Cries in 2022 tears with being in the sports castle for ETH Denver. The main talks haven't had any real alpha so far. Lots of we're going to make it and down bad talk. The regulatory panel was fun to watch, but again, no pertinent info was learned. It was inferred that for any reasonable change in the regulatory situation, Gary would literally just have to wake up on the right side of the bed one day. That was a quote from Hester Peirce. And no one on the panel suggested they thought it was likely. Legislation in the U.S. needs to be passed. Representative Emmer was hopeful. Another spam call, sorry. Representative Emmer was hopeful on this. Swag game has not been as good as ETH Denver or DevCon, but we are in the depths of the bear. And a rainy street crawl was last night. I am not a bankless citizen, so I didn't go to their closed event. Had a hella good Wagyu smash burger at a place across the street, though. Overall, it's still fun to be spending a few days with so many like-minded people in a fun town. Bear market conferences are the best for this reason. Yes, and David Hoffman said it. I agree, too. This is where, man, this is like something I say. You always make your best friends at the bottom of a bear market. You just do. It's like kind of where people are just like, you're not worried about price. You're worried about working even harder. And everybody's like-minded that's really in this for the long run. Only the real degens are here. If any actual news or info is discovered, I'll be sure to drop it in here. Next year's Permissionless is on the books for October 9th through the 11th, 2024 in Salt Lake City. And Ryan has already asked me, and David too, if I would go to Salt Lake City and barbecue out there. So, yeah, that would be something. That's going to be a bit of an undertaking. Let's see. Future of Everything's also... he was at the barbecue. Hanging out with the A-Word and JT at Permissionless, taste testing some early offerings from the smoker and talking DAOs, solo staking, and the history of Ethfinance. No reason to go to the main event like I planned. It's just too much fun here. I'm a CA, certified accountant maybe, and longtime ETH community member, currently building Sobol, SOBOL.io. Also, I'm an early contributor to Bankless DAO, plus tons of other DAO communities. Total DAO needed. Nice to find the daily because my Twitter feed is pure noise. Thanks for the gift, good barbecue buddy, and have good vibes today. So, yeah, that's right. Sobol, your DAO organization's hub. So, yeah, we need to, I'm going to put this in the chat. Yeah, and I don't think they are in here. I'm going to put this link in the chat, but that was the big thing is, it was like a broken record because most of the people are on Twitter now and Reddit. I've noticed that there's a lot of crypto people that are like this 2020 era, 2019 era that got in because they learned about it on Twitter. And then if they find any crypto related stuff on Reddit, it just doesn't compute to them. Like it's pure spam, I think, just kind of bluntly putting it. And so A-Word and I were like spreading the EVMavericks gospel of Ethfinance to these folks and said, check out the daily. We only got like 200 or 300 comments. It's like, it's easy enough to get through a whole day's news, like a newspaper, and treat it as such. And then even better, be a contributor as such. And then kind of briefly talked about how we used the Reddit Legos to come up with this Doots thing and this live stream thing. And they were very receptive to it. They just didn't know where to look on Reddit because it's so, Twitter's kind of trash to them now, even though that's kind of how they learned about this space. They didn't realize that there could be a quality group on a place like Reddit that actually does good stuff with Ethereum. So anyway, we'll keep them around as long as possible. So that's right. Okay, I'm glad. Yeah, Sobol. So this guy, now it's coming to me. Actually, we hung out the next day. This was a guy we went and ate tacos with for lunch. Really, he is a total EV Maverick ethos kind of guy. And then he turned me on to another company he thinks I could do some video work for. But I won't go on about it now. But anyway, this dude's from Consensus. This guy that made this Sobol stuff, he's working for this group, and they got a ton of people working on it. All right. Very good. Moving on up. Let's see. That was some Hans Gruber. All right. And Astafari 12 comments on the pros and cons of possible government actions. Oh, God. I would rather the U.S. not allow spot ETFs than red tape DeFi, which is basically what is happening with the proposed rules that are perhaps impossible to follow. ETFs are probably great for price action, but they aren't crypto. I remember how excited I was in 2020 about synthetic stocks, DeFi, insurance, gambling, and other use cases happening on Ethereum. Now we know that synthetic stocks are a massive regulatory no-no. And I'm overall happy about what is possible in DeFi, but it looks like all front ends will require KYC in the future, for US users at least. We are lucky that an exception was made for validators. They wanted KYC of all transactions, which is obviously not possible. That is one of my issues. It has become obvious that regulation doesn't come from a fair and logical and neutral point. It's a bit of a circus and impossible to guess what will come. Yeah, nicely put. Yeah, it's like careful what you wish for. If you want all the spot ETF stuff going on, they'll clamp down on DeFi on the other side of it. That capture. And Alexis Kef introduces MetaMask snaps. I just got a MetaMask email informing that MetaMask snaps open beta is live. And yeah, so this is like these are like plugins for MetaMask, if you can believe that. MetaMask snaps allows users to customize their MetaMask wallet. But what is a snap? Individual snaps are features and functionalities created by third-party developers that you can install directly into your wallet. MetaMask says that, quote, all snaps available in the directory today have been audited by MetaMask team and third parties. Our decision to have an allow list was made both out of an abundance of caution and because we have ideas for how to add additional safety for a permissionless model that will take longer to implement. Over time, we plan to open up the auditing process to create a fully permissionless platform. More info on snaps can be found at MetaMask. Users can now install 30 plus snaps across three main categories, which are transaction insights, interoperability, and notifications. And there's wow. They have a lot of different interoperability, looks like. Solana, Algorand, Sui, Unipass, Starknet, ETHSign. It's like Casper Manager. Awesome. Okay. MetaMask is churning out the butter. And finally for this week, Harag looks into the future of Gnosis Chain. Some time ago, we had a discussion here about Gnosis Chain and its future. Today, I watched two talks from DAppCon 23 by two Gnosis developers and researchers. They seem to look into possibilities of becoming a Validium L2 to Ethereum. This is all very exploratory, and nothing has been set in stone. As far as I understand, they could write checkpoints to Ethereum and keep the validators as is for data availability. This seems to need a lot of more work, and especially making it trustless seems to be a bit tricky. The approach they are looking into now seems to be more taxing to the validators, as they would also need to be able to verify the Ethereum chain at the same time. There seems to be some ways around it, though. Ethereum's future looks quite good to me. Everyone thinks about becoming a rollup /L2. The first guy is by Felipe Chalmers and talks generally about the future of Gnosis Chain. Towards the end, he talks about possibilities of turning Gnosis Chain into an L2. Whoa. The second talk is by Dappline, which describes in detail the approach they are looking into at the moment. And these are links you can get at dailydoots.com. And I hope the YouTube links work as the videos are still streaming. YouTube seems not to like the link timestamp directly. Okay, well, surely they're not still on stage now, so that live stream should be over. All right, I don't know if anybody's got any comments here before we wrap up. And yeah, okay. Treebeard says haven't tried any yet, but a Tenderly integration seems nice regarding the snaps from MetaMask. So good deal there. Don't forget to mint your POAP if you haven't done so already. Thank you for hanging out once again. Stick around after the live stream because we continue the party in the hotel lobby on Discord for a bonus hour of popcorn. It's a fun place to let loose when the parents aren't watching on YouTube. Hi, Mom. On behalf of Ethfinance and the EVMavericks DAO, my name is JT. Cheers and big hugs from Kansas City.